And automobiles, there's a common denominator, 28 pounds of pressure in each tire for a balanced, smooth drive. You bought it because they told you this is the smoothest riding vehicle that there is. You decide, I don't want four wheels that have 28 pounds of pressure. I want one that has 10 pounds of pressure on it. What kind of ride do you think you're going to have? Bumpy. And that's what lives are when they do not understand the 8 areas encompass every single area of all of our lives.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts Nate and Brian are hanging out with you again, and this time we're going to be bringing you a little bit of balance. That's right, we got Ed Staub joining us today, talking about his book and concept, The Life of Balance versus Imbalance. And man, is there not a better time of the year than right now as we are looking down the barrel of a busy summer to be talking about putting some balance into our life. But before we do all that, as we normally do, we want to break down the subject ourselves. And for that, we're going to turn to Brian for our quote.
We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein.
Man, going deep here on this Monday morning.
Yeah, well, I got a chance to go over the book some, and I can see that this is a lot about the type of thinking we're using. It's like when you read this book, it's a could be a speed bump in your life. It's a stopping point where you go, hold on, where am I at right now? Where did I hope I'd be right now in every area of life? And where would I like to be in the future? And a lot of deciding where you're going to be in the future is going to require you to use some different thinking.
The different thinking, Brian, is right on because, and we're going to jump into this with Ed, but I mean, the idea here is that Waste No Day isn't just about HVAC, plumbing, or electrical. It's about your life, which is why today's subject is going to be so pertinent to what is to be the well-rounded you, all-encompassing, not just your career. Yes, that's what we focus on here a lot because we're designed to be talking about the industry. But if you're not balancing out the rest of you, there's going to be some problems facing you in the future if you're not already enduring them right now.
That's right. Who is in control of your life wheel?
The subheading.
Big question asked in the book. Not only who's in control, but who is the focus of it, I would say. It seemed to me in the book, even more than who's in control of your life wheel, who was the focus of it, who was the center focus. So
right, and that's a great question that I think we're going to jump into with Ed. He's got so much content to bring today. Brian, I volunteer that we just skip right to it and get our guest on the show here. And with that, we are going to put Ed Staub in your passenger seat. Our guest today is Ed Staub. He has served as the owner of Staub & Associates, a franchise of Sandler Training, an international sales and leadership human dynamics training and coaching organization, and specializes in providing ongoing, gradual, and incremental learning to people who are serious about their personal and professional development. He grew up in South Central Pennsylvania and was the third of 7 siblings raised by a single mother. Ed decided at a very early age that he intended to break away from the pattern of a drunken and abusive father and began praying for and visualizing becoming a dedicated husband and father based on developing a life of values, harmony, and hard work. And as one of those people that knows Ed personally, I can tell you that this isn't just fluff in some type of bio. This is real life for this man. He lives it out every single day. And from what I know of him, has been doing it ever since he made that decision. Ultimately, he set the groundwork by doing that for Ed's 50-year business career, beginning with 20 years as a salesperson, terminal manager, and director of employee training with two of the United States' top 15 trucking companies, which led to the 32-year creation and development of his own business. His daughters, Kate and Kelly, offer a blend of spiritual, mental, and physical principles that promote living a life of balance. Ed is an author and speaker and is committed to challenging people to transform their lives by walking with Jesus Christ and influencing others. He is married to his beautiful wife, Tibby, and has 17 in their clan, including children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Nate.
Absolutely. It's good to have you here with us. We are excited to have you joining our show to talk about balance versus imbalance because, as you well know, our industry is full of a lot of hectic, imbalanced people, sometimes ourselves included among that company. And we are heading into summer, which for the HVAC crew is certainly the busiest time. Mm-hmm. But I just think generally in as a whole, the trades just ramps up. Like people are using their homes, they're in and out, they're doing all kinds of things, maybe doing some of their summer projects they're finally taking care of. And so we find that all three of the trades, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, all just start booming in the summer. And what better time than right now, right on the cusp of it, to talk about making sure that your life stays in balance.
Yeah, and more than just the trades, it's like we're busier at work. Homeowners are busier, like you said, using everything. Our kids are all in sports. We've got yard work to do this time of year, certainly here in the Midwest and Northeast, and I'm guessing it doesn't change a whole lot in certain places, but everything is just busier right now, and it's a great time to have balance in your life, but no better time than to start talking about getting balance in your life. Ed and I actually met, I don't even know if you know this, Ed, but we met 10 years ago this September is when I started at this company.
Well, I knew it went back about that time, but didn't know it was September. But
yeah, so
terrific.
Ed is a Sandler trainer and would come in here on Wednesday morning once a month and do I believe it was an hour-long training.
Yes, we did about an hour and a half, yeah.
And I was in a truck at that. Oh, yeah, it was longer than an hour. We'd get in here pretty early. So I was in a truck at that time, and you introduced me to Sandler training, and I'm now what is it, Foundations member?
Foundation and Sales Mastery. We used to call it President's Club, but it's
President's Club.
Sales
right.
Mastery.
My book is President's Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we go back a decade. I'm guessing you guys go back, what, 12?
11, working on 12, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good to see you again in person. It's been quite some time. You don't train the class anymore. Your daughter, Kate, trains it now.
Yeah, Kate and Kelly, my two daughters, are taking over the day-to-day operation of the training and the growth, and I'm still now a little bit behind the scenes, making the decision to write the book after a 50-plus year career in business, and but this will probably put me back into it a little bit more because of the emphasis on the book and drawing upon what we've been doing for the past, with Sandler, we just started our 33rd year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's really cool that you have your daughters involved in it. It's a family business at this point, and I've seen you and certainly you and Kate work together many times, and you guys work together very well. It's like, I have young kids at my house, 17 down to 4, and it's exciting to me to see this kind of thing and think maybe one day, Well,
I'll never forget when the girls came to me at different times, and it went, and for years until recently, our daughter-in-law was also involved in the business. And she and our son are now at Hershey School for Children as house parents, and using the training that we did all through those years to help have impact on young people.
Oh, very cool.
Seniors before they graduate, junior and senior high before they graduate out into the world. But as far as Kate and Kelly, each one of them, when they came to me 20 plus years ago, Kelly now has been with me 25, 26 years, and Kate 20-some. And each one of them, when they came to me, they said, "Dad, we're thinking we'd like to get into the business." Because when I started in 1990 with my wife and I, we call it our days of temporary insanity, where we had 2 kids ready for college and one not far behind. Voluntarily left a $450 million trucking company that I was director of training for, sales, management, leadership, and made a large investment. Went to zero income in the middle of a 1990 recession with no customers, and so that gives the basis of living that and watching that come to fruition and building something which was based on how, quite frankly, we got together. The type of people that I decided to work with back in 1990 was who I write about in the book today, separating what I have found working with the smallest to the plumbing and heating and air conditioning companies to the IBMs of the world, and noticing a common denominator of what I call the 90-10. Some are familiar with the 80-20 Pareto's principle. In life, I've seen it get closer to 90-10, where 10% will do what the 90% won't do, but the 90% what the 10% have. And we see that more proliferated now than ever before in the thinking of people in this world. And I saw that way back when, as I made that decision to start this business with Sandler. I was one of 50 back in 1990, most east of the Mississippi with Sandler as far as franchises. But it was based on internal change. It was based on ongoing, gradual, incremental development, growth over time versus the world of motivation and the world of quick fix and impact training. And that's still the battle to this day. But I came from the camp of gradual and incremental over time is a biblical principle, and it's real. It's the way life happens for those that will win more often than not in life. But whether they're winning or losing, they still have balance in their life. And I wanted that for ourselves, for me, as someone, and if people read the book, they'll see that I am the third of 7 siblings that was raised by a single mom after a drunken dad left us early on. And I made a decision that I didn't have to repeat what my father was and start a new generation. And that started thinking in about 6th grade. And by God's grace, I have now, for almost 52 years, have the wife that I envisioned back when I was in 6th grade, and now a clan of, with our first great-grandchild last couple months ago, we're up to 17 in the tribe of
Congrats.
Staubs. And,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And but all came, and go back to the girls, when they wanted to get into the business, I said, well, I have to take my dad hat off and put my business hat on, and I have to have a conversation with you about what this business is, so that I make sure that so that you know how much I love you, how close we are as a family. I said, so I want to make sure that Christmas or all the holidays, that we don't have uncomfortable conversations because I had to fire you somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
So you have to know what it is, and they did, and they wanted, and now they're living it. They have clients that love them, not riding on my coattail. Kate is Kate, and yeah, she'll refer to her dad, Ed, often, but it's more what Dad taught her, and Kelly, and that they have embraced, and they know it's good, and their focus is on others. And mine was always on others. I never did it to entertain anyone with the motivators and the entertainers talk about. I did it to help people, regardless of where they came from, regardless of their background or sex or pedigree or family. It didn't matter where they came from. It's where they wanted to go and what they were willing to do to get there. And that's what the career really is about. And Sandler, the franchise, gave me that ability. And like I said, I I was an early adapter in 1990s. Sandler started looking for people like me who would start these, what I called business health clubs in their local areas, and where people, just like they would to what's the big chain now, so whether it's Gold's or what's the
Planet Fitness.
Planet Fitness. It's the same concept, only we work on attitude, behavior, and techniques. We work on skill sets, thinking differently, and then with a process of giving how to communicate and sell and lead and things like that. But it's over time, and so now today I'm one of 30, 200, almost 250 franchises in 30 plus countries. So
wow.
At this point, Debbie and I are the fourth oldest in longevity of Sandler, who bought into something, and I didn't have to leave because it gave me the ability to impact others for the short term and the long term. So all this is a journey now, which has led to me putting it into the book for the next generation to have a plan and have the ability to what I call diagnose their lives, to really take a look at their life through what we'll talk more about in the book, how it's structured around the balance wheel, and by first looking at your imbalance wheel of your life wheel, and then breaking it apart, each area of your life, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, work, career, family, financial, social, any area of your life, any and all areas of your life, where you can just break it down into the section and look at how do you think about that? And then accordingly to that thought process is how you behave, which leads to your results. So if you're unhappy or just really fed up, which the majority of the world is with their lives, help you really to break that down as to where you're really doing well, but also mostly what you want to work on to where you're, quite frankly, messing up. And you will admit versus somebody telling you have to do something different. You'll admit that what you're doing is not working, and you will then commit to something that can work, that is proven to work. And you do that by submitting to somebody else to help you along the way, just like you, Nate, and the team here did to me as a coach, a facilitator of growth and development of ideas, but you had to run with them. I couldn't do it for you. Just like you can't for your families. You can't do it for your employees, your team members. You can't do it for anybody else. And so it really is written for the individual, because when a bunch of individuals get good, that's what they call a team. And the stronger each individual is, then the stronger the team will be. So whether it's a family team or a business team or a church team, or it doesn't matter what it is. But it all starts with the one. So that's really where I address it by giving, breaking it down so people can understand where they're at, and with then ending up with a game plan of really how to move forward. A game plan that is transferable, it's reliable, it's proven, that doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, again, that you can do it if you're committed to saying, I'm the problem, and therefore I'm the solution.
Well, that all pretty much lines up with our motto here, Ed. I mean, the podcast is called Waste No Day.
Yes, I saw that.
And we're constantly trying to figure out ways to make ourselves better, make ourselves improved, and root out those weaknesses, looking in the mirror first and saying, there's the problem.
Yes.
Right. So I'm looking forward to jumping in here. And as you know, our main listening audience is technicians, plumbers, and electricians in the field. So if you could try to summarize the entire book into a sentence or two and just say, this is why this matters to you as a technician, as a plumber, as an electrician right now, how would you address that?
Well, in a sentence, I'll say, I always ask the question, and I still ask it to this day, what do you want to be when you grow up? Really? Are you happy with your life? Are you happy with where you're at? And the book starts, when it's talking about it, help to identify. Most people aren't. The majority of people recognize that, but then they don't know what to do about it. So it's almost like how am I doing, and how can I make it better? But so the first thing we do with really stress unashamedly is that you have to decide. Each individual, each technician, they're people, and they have the same issues, just like you were saying earlier, Brian, about work and kids and athletics or whatever that is, or whatever it is in life. Everybody's life is, quite frankly, you would help. The book would help you understand your life is fuller than it should be. Well, it's busier than it should be, but it could be fuller by being less busy. And this book would help with that. It's just getting control of it. How do you get control of your life? And you get control of your life by giving up control. You think you're in control. You're not. Nobody is, but the creator of the universe is. And I make that clear. Who is at the center of your life wheel, your balance wheel? And with the imbalance wheel, it's always me, myself, or somebody else is at the center of that wheel. Those who are truly balanced for life, both now and for eternity, have Jesus Christ at the center of their wheel. Everything. And that then turns into who's thinking, your thinking or God's thinking, are you going to live by? And so we break that down in each chapter of the book. But it's really just to give people hope that do not have it. And the research is overwhelming that most people are without virtually any hope. But those that still have hope for their future, this was written for them to validate the ones that are still doing it. Good to Great called it a flywheel, or most people live by the doom loop. As soon as something's not working, or even if it is working, somebody's coming in and says, well, I didn't create it, so I want to be known for something, so I'll change what's working. And we can see that in the world we live in today, and start over, and then they don't know the energy and the time that it takes and the effort and the expertise to work a new way of life instead of just borrowing from wisdom. There's two ways to learn. You can learn by school of hard knocks, wrapping your head up against the wall for years, or you can learn from wisdom from others that have already done that and are willing to share that with you, so to avoid and help your growth curve. So it's about growth and development and becoming comfortable in your own skin. It's a normal phrase, but most people aren't, again. So dissecting why they're not and helping them with, solid advice and solutions and ways of thinking that anyone who wants to be more and wants to have more than they have today, if they embrace, again, that they're the problem. Not anyone else. Mom didn't do it to you. Dad didn't do it to you. Government didn't do it to you. Yeah, there are influences, but at the end of the day, our choices we either have us balanced or imbalanced. So we really dissect that through the book.
Now, speaking of choices, Ed, you have trained and worked with people over decades now of your life. I want to focus on the imbalance piece first. As you reflect back on your career and the countless lives that you've interacted with and exchanged stories and sat across a cup of coffee and listened to what they were doing, what have been some of those examples of where imbalance has just completely thrown their life off of where it was supposed to be going?
Well, that's excellent, Nate. I really appreciate that, and what I've done to help us along the way from that answer that question is I've broken down not just bullet points, but reasons why that has occurred. So what I call the life of unbalanced, somebody that's imbalanced, that the 90%er. Here's a breakdown. So for those listening, you want to, if you're going to be honest with yourself, just say, I'm in, and I'm afterwards we'll give, what makes the 10%ers,
Right.
How they operate,
Right.
How they think and so forth. Well, the first one, again, is the life of unbalanced people. they think they're in control, so they're at the center. So it's their thinking that they're operating by, therefore they're behaving by. And so it's me, myself, and I. It's all about me type of thinking. And you can, if you hear somebody talking, it's loaded with I. And nobody, and quite frankly, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about me. They care about themselves first. So first, understanding that. But the difference between the 90% and 10%, the 90% are things driven. All their focus is on things versus relationship. They have huge disparities between the quality of life across all 8 areas that I mentioned earlier, the spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, family, work, that type of thing. And when they try to operate under the false belief that they are really the ones in control, 90% look at life in the mirror and fix the blame instead of the mirror, they look out the window to fix blame on everybody for their messes.
Bingo.
And they blame everybody else for the messes in their life. They live by insanity. Everybody knows the definition of insanity that I have tested. You said about my career. I ask everybody. They all know it. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's not the insanity part. But the insanity part is expecting a different outcome. As I said earlier, our best thinking has us where we're at today. And if we're miserable with where we're at, we have to change our thinking. And that has to change first. Well, everybody else comes up with plans and things. Well, if I just have this, if I just back to things oriented, I'll be happy. They think happiness is balance, and it's not.
All right, bigger house, faster car,
got it.
Different zip code.
Yeah, and they also, the 90%, all see themselves as victims. We're seeing this more and more, especially in our country, than ever before. They don't see themselves as winners. They see themselves as mediocre. They're I-centered, meaning, again, their focus is on themselves. They have a low self-concept of really themselves when it comes down to their identity, because it's all based on things. And if they don't have things, well, how can I feel good about myself? And the world plays into that. They say the person with the most toys wins. Well, no, the most people with the most toys still, when they die, they're not taking them with them. So, at the end of the day, that's not the issue. They have a scarcity mentality. They only believe that others could have what they could have if they were willing to do what others did to make that happen. They don't believe there's enough out there, even though they have more things today than they've ever had in their lives before in many cases, and they're still nowhere near content with that. But,
ooh, best place to see that play itself out, right? You both know it. You mean you got 3 kids, Ed?
I have 3 grown kids, 7 grandkids, and 1 great-grandkid.
And a great-grandkid. Yeah. And Nate, you have 4 kids?
4 kids.
I have 4 kids. We've all 3 seen this play out. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, when are your kids the most miserable? For me, it is almost always an hour after they've opened all their Christmas presents.
Bingo. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
The anticipation is awesome. I want to get this thing. I hope I unwrap this. Seeing those boxes is the most exciting thing in the world. Running down the steps from their bedroom to get under that tree, tearing into everything. An hour later, they're surrounded by all these material things, and they're the least happy they've been in a month leading up to that.
Well, yeah. So not only you say in kids, look at the world of what's going on right now. If somebody was listening and watching what's going on right now in the court of law with Johnny Depp and his wife. They're suing each other for $50 to $100 million.
Yeah.
They're miserable human beings by their own admission. And they have the same head trash reasons for doing it that I'm talking about what the normal person has without the $50 or $100 million. And their careers are in a mess because they cannot handle, whether you have 50 million or billions, It doesn't matter. You see pro athletes that sign a $20 million contract. The next year they wanted 25 because somebody else, a rookie, got 24.5 the year before. And so there's nothing about contract. It's all, if I have more. They're thinking, if I have more, I'll be valued more. Well, they may be valued more by the people paying them the money, more valuable, but they don't understand it from an identity standpoint, their self-value standpoint. And they prove that by rape, pillage, and plunder. There's not a day that goes by that you don't see someone with millions and multi-millions, athletes, self-destructing. So it's not picking on anybody. It's real world. It's out there. So it doesn't matter to what degree. The more you have, most people cannot handle success. People say the number one reason for failure is failure. No, it's success. And you just described it. It starts with the kids. The more that they get, if it's just focused on a thing, normally it breaks. And as soon as it happens, the latest iPhone or whatever it is, it's all, it's called planned obsolescence. They engineer it to break at a certain point so that they can sell more of them. And we get used to that cycling, so it's all about, again, back to what started when Nate asked me this, it's they're things driven, and things will never produce real joy, real peace, real tranquility, real balance in one's life. And a couple of others, I'll just, finish the list that I have here. And we address all these throughout the book, but I said scarcity mentality, but they have poor money concepts. They've never been taught. So we have one of the chapters on financial is teaching people. Most people do not have a budget, and I mean most, meaning 90% of the people in life do not have a budget. Most people don't set the 9%ers don't set goals. Their decision-making process. They don't really know how to make decisions. It's all emotional, or they make an emotional decision, but because they say, well, that's logical. But it's logical based on their thinking, and their thinking's already been distorted. So that causes problems for the big problems for the 90%. They have, again, poor or low self-awareness. They're not aware of. We see this play out every day. Where people have no awareness on what they're doing or what impact they're having on others. So whether it's spouses, whether it's constituencies, which they just have no self-awareness because they're never the problem. So they're always, again, in this category where they're looking out the window to fix blame on somebody else. I mean, live in a country that's still blaming the president that hasn't been president for a year and a half for everything instead of taking responsibility. Well, we do that in our personal lives as well. Again, I don't want to make it's not political. They're just primary examples we live with every day. But most of the ones we live with are right inside our homes and where we work and what we do. And again, to finish the list, the 90% are takers. They want what somebody else has without paying the price to get it. They're spenders. So as soon as they take or get, because they're things oriented, that they go to spend, so they get into debt tremendously and don't know how to get, and they expect somebody else to pay for their debt. So all these things start with a point and then move out and includes a lot of others. They take a long time to recover from rejection. So we spend a lot of time on talking about how to overcome emotional rejection and dealing with that, and how to get when you have a stronger concept of yourself, it's easier to do. But they're excuse makers. We've talked about that. They don't accept responsibility, and they have a lack of desire and very weak on commitment to do what it really takes to make things happen. So
when you say lack of desire, what do you mean by that part?
Well, they don't have any real reasons for doing it. They don't have, and people that have real reasons to do it have goals to back it up, and they have a plan to back it up. And we go the latter chapters after we break down what what creates an imbalanced life, one that's unbalanced, is then we give, which has been proven for centuries, of a repeatable goal setting. People work at places, they've heard about SMART goals, SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. Well, there's a lot of things that go with that, that's all true. But again, most people don't have goals, and if they don't, they're not very smart. They're just goals. I want. See, I want is not the language of a committed adult. I want is the language of a child. And you could be a 50, 60, 70-year-old for it. It doesn't matter what age. The moment I want, and I believe I should have it because you have it, it just doesn't fly. It never did, never will.
They're figuring it out, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're getting it done.
But it's called, look at the mess it's causing. And I'm not just talking about mess. I'm talking about our society right now is at stake over these decisions. So, I really did, for the individual that they talked about, I take it back to the individual. I look at each person I work with when they came into the training. I always said, when you come in here, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to give you ability to motivate yourself, the tools to do that, the tools to take responsibility, the tools to live out. If you do have a desire for something, to say, okay, and we talk about that later in the book and what's really important versus something that, well, I think I'd like to have and be nice to have, but no, it's really important. And I'm saying above all, I'm going to build my life around that, and then I'll pay the price to get that, to make that happen. Importance is something you really put value on, and most of the time, that's not a thing. It's again, back I said to Matt earlier, to Nate earlier about the having the idea of what do I want to be when I grow up? How I want to look in the mirror and see myself, and then how do I, it'd be nice if others would see that, and they will if you become what you're projecting, you'd like to be.
So Ed, obviously this is an audio podcast, and unfortunately we can't actually show the the graphic that we're going to talk about. But switching over to the balance side of things, describe for us in the details there. What is the balance wheel? How does it actually leg out, and why is it a wheel? Why is that important?
In the Waste No Day Facebook group, which anyone can friend Nate or me and get an invite to, we'll put a picture of the wheel as well as a picture of the cover of the book for anyone interested in finding it. Good,
because right inside the cover of the book does show a balance wheel, and the reason for the wheel is, and I use a car analogy, and I spell that out into the book, that I ask people to pick out the smoothest, and so whether I understand, Brian, that you have people from across the pond, different parts of the world that are listening in on this.
Yeah,
Fair?
Right around 30 countries.
I got it. So, but every one of those countries, they have automobiles. So, and automobiles, there's a common denominator. Most of them have four wheels with tires on them. So when we talk about, the wheel or the tire, the inflation, and if they're supposed to be, let's just say, 28 pounds of pressure in each tire for a balanced, smooth drive in the automobile, which was designed, but whether it was I'll normally get Mercedes or Lexus or Beamer or BMW or something like that. I said, okay, when you bought that, paid a lot of money for that automobile, and you drove it off when you picked it up, you bought it, a lot of it, because they told you this is one of the smoothest, if not the smoothest riding vehicle that there is. And you go out, let's say you buy it, you go out, you prove it so. It is. And then you decide, well, I want to be different. I don't want four wheels that have 28 pounds of pressure. I want one that has 10 pounds of pressure in it. And you put that just one tire or wheel on the car with that kind of pressure on, what kind of ride do you think you're going to have?
Yeah, lumpy, obviously.
Bumpy. And that's what lives are when they start messing around and do not understand the value and the integration between spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, work, social, family. Those 8 areas encompass every single area of all of our lives. And what the book does to show throughout each chapter, when we break down specific chapters or specific areas of the wheel, spokes, if you will, it makes for a good visual when people understand it and can see. And then they were looking at the balance wheel where they have all, let's say, the 28 pounds of pressure in it. Or the imbalance wheel, and it also shows on the book cover, the circle at the center of the wheel has a question mark, because I, again, unashamedly said, who is in control of your life wheel? Whose thinking are you living by? And until you or I or anyone else answers that question, they will never have the kind of balanced life that they think they should or they'd like to have, because the creator gets to decide, just like the creators of air conditioning or the creators of automobiles or they're the ones that decide, and they make warranties based on what they created. But if you violate those rules for the warranty to work, they won't pay for it. So it costs you more in the long run every time you violate those kind of rules. So I used that as just example, because everybody can relate to a wheel, and if they're not balanced nowadays, the cars will actually say your left wheel needs more pressure in it to be balanced. So right. There's reminders. Even technology understands that, and they can equate it, but. So this book is basically helping you look in the mirror to say, all right, am I doing the major things that we talked earlier, Brian, we just touched on, in each area where the world says do 15, 20 things in each area. Highly successful people have always only done 1, 2, and 3 things at most that were really important, that got them their 80-20 or 90-10, that they did consistently over time to keep it balanced. And that's where the stress is. So the balance wheels. Then we have, right out of Good to Great, we use the Hedgehog Concept by getting people to think, what do they want to be best in world at? What are they really passionate about? And if they do that, what will drive their economic reality. If they do those things, those are the people in the 10% that ultimately take care. They don't have economic problems, no matter what they're making. And later on in the book, I say you're never too young or never too old. And I use a 27-year-old grandson who paid his way through college, and his story and never made more than $27,000, and he's 27,000 a year, but mostly averaged 10, 11,000 for 10 years a year, from pizza to working $10, $11 an hour. Paid himself through college for 6 years, paid his car off, and already has a fund to buy it because his goal is to have a beach house. He's single, but he wants a beach house down Rehoboth Beach on the eastern shore of the United States. And he's already got $16,000 in savings for that. And again, paid for cash is local community college, or Harrisburg area community college, paid for that, got his degree, and is doing what he's passionate about, helping others, taking care of many of your parents and grandparents in the Alzheimer's unit. He's a caregiver. But he thinks differently, and therefore he has more. I know I work with people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and don't have $16,000 in their savings account because they're spenders versus savers. So
And good for him, Ed, and a challenge for all of us, really. Man, if we had some of those ideas when we were younger, he'd be a lot farther ahead. Speaking of being farther ahead, we are blowing through the time on this podcast, and so I don't want to skip over those 8 categories which you mentioned there, Ed. And if we could just do like kind of a brief summary on, because I'm thinking some people might have a little bit of a question. Well, what exactly does that mean? So let's start with mental. What does mental mean? Like, is that a goal that I'm supposed to start doing one of those brain memorization apps or something? Like, what is a mental goal?
Great question, and no, it breaks apart. Mental is how we think. As I talked about earlier, what is it that you think about? What goes into your mind that leads you to do something? And again, there's either a worldview or a biblical view on thinking. The creator of the universe says, as a person thinks, therefore they go, they behave. So we break that apart in each chapter, but in the mental, it is showing. It talks about the people with degrees, the people with that this world and our government and many other things is based on. The smartest person in the room is based on IQ. And that's typically 4.0 and above, or how many degrees that they have. Well,
is that still the case with what's going on in the White House, or have we decided we're not doing that anymore?
No, they're still holding on to it. They are the ones in control. But what it is doing, it is saying that. But Dr. Tom Stanley, who wrote about The Millionaire Next Door and A Millionaire Mind, going back over 40 years of research, has broken down every area of how people think, therefore how they behave. And he broke that apart long ago and decades ago. But the people in power still, the universities, the professors, people making $800,000, $900,000 a year as a professor for a couple of days of work, who are indoctrinating, is based on, but we have the right to do it because we're the smart ones. But the real research of highly successful people throughout anything you read in human understanding and all books, from the Bible on through to Covey's highly successful people, Andy Andrews, highly successful people, Sandler, highly successful people, Good to Great, highly successful people. It debunks that time and time again because it shows through real data and through real anecdotal evidence that the number one, there are 3 quotients. One is intellectual quotient. Instead of being the number one, it is by far the third of the 3. EQ is number 2. We spent a lot of time on that. Emotional intelligence, your emotional quotient, how you relate to people, how you can actually express yourself, how you can get along with people in the relationships. And what allows you to do that, the number one element and proven of success is your AQ, which stands for adversity quotient. We've been giving you and others for 30 plus years a program called No Guts, No Gain. Well, what they all tie in with, how do you develop the ability to overcome rejection, hurt in your life? How do people come out of terrible situations? Where everybody else whines and complains and gives an excuse for that they'll never be able to do anything. Well, adversity quotient is really evaluate someone, how quickly they overcome trash in their lives, so real deaths, cancers, parents leaving, children being murdered and whatever. And where the intellectual person, as soon as something goes wrong that they don't like, we use the term nowadays, their heads explode. They cannot handle it. So because they have no emotional intelligence. They have very little, and they have very little AQ, courage, or to get over something in a hurry, because there's no need for them to get over it. They're right, you're wrong, and so they just scream louder and louder. And people do that, based on how they've been, influenced and raised, and it's a choice. And for those that choose to say, I want more, therefore I'll do more. It has nothing to do with IQ. You can always get all the skills, all the knowledge, and that's what we do. We break it down. We call it ACASH. AKASH. That's how do you change? How do you improve? How do you grow? And the first part is you become aware. Right now, we're creating awareness in people. Next thing is they may pick up some knowledge if they study something, if they go to Google something, if they look at read a book or whatever, they'll pick up some knowledge. Well, 80% of the population stops right there. Well, life doesn't stop.
Just short of implementation.
Right, and the next ACASH, is application, implementation. They start applying knowledge. You see, knowledge is not power. Properly applied knowledge is power. So they apply and with application, and then they find out what's working, what's not working. And and again, at that point, almost all but 20% give up. Because they say, no, I want to do it my way. My way worked better where it didn't work better. But they're uncomfortable, so they don't want to they don't want to go through the hard work of change. So they quit. Where the 20% keep working, and that's called skill development. They keep working on application. They keep tweaking it. They keep learning and growing. That's where the continual learning comes from. And that's what coaches do. That's what facilitators of learning help people do. That's what you do in your roles with people to say, okay, we did it well over here. We did this well, but what could we have done better over here? So that's where you're tweaking. And the more you do that, repetition is the mother of habit development. So skills development over time leads to real habit formation. So that's your ACASH. And then the 10% ultimately live in the complete cycle of habit formation, where it has just now become habit. I know it's the right thing to do. I do it. It's working. I have evidence it's working. I feel good about it. I have the results from it. Everybody else around me in my sphere of influence is happy about it. And they keep going. And this is written for people like myself, who will be 72 shortly, who, I probably exercise more and do more than most 30, 40-year-olds. Why do I do it? So my family and my kids, my grandkids and my great-grandkids, Tibby and I have energy for them, because it's not about ROI, but how you necessarily, it's about ROE that we talked about, return on energy. It takes energy, mental, emotional, physical energy to do things. And if you're not exercising all those muscles consistently to impact the other areas of your life, that's what causes the problems or creates the real opportunities to grow. And
you just mentioned there about ROE. So let's jump into the physical element. That's another one that we need to put focus on. What exactly is included in that?
Well, that any behavior that you necessarily want to do, but it's not. I'm more of a Rocky versus. I don't need to go to a place to get all the exercise equipment or whatever.
We're taking it back a little bit, maybe for some of our audience. But Rocky didn't need that Russian, that amazing gym with all the computers.
It's the same thing.
The steroids they were plugging into Ivan Drago.
But
you just needed a tire, right?
But 2 or 3 behaviors doctors will tell you. Like yesterday, I walked 80 minutes and did 25 minutes of crunches and
hold on
with some 10-pound weights.
25 minutes of crunches?
Of crunches and weightlifting and whatever. I did 150 crunches.
Oh, okay. My goodness, still 150 crunches.
Okay.
I had 150 crunches in my cereal this morning.
I might be able to do 150 crunches in 25 minutes.
So I do those. I do stretches for the exercise, and I walk. I used to run. I ran consistently for 10 years. At one point in time in my life, before 20 years ago, I came down with MS. So in my feet and legs, I have you don't want to be in those feet and legs, but I got used to that. But I still walk. I don't run because of the pounding, but my weight stays where I want it to be. because in moderation. So in the physical, it's all about eating properly. It's not a fit for life. I still like ice cream, so when I like it, I eat it, but I don't eat it every night, 3 scoops. I might once a week or something like that. So the moderation of that. But the exercise itself, you're exercising your physical muscles. Walking is everybody, for the most part, can do that and can walk. But when I ran and I didn't fluctuate more than 3 pounds in 10 years by running 3.5 miles 5-6 times a week and doing, again, about 20-30 minutes of exercises of push-ups in those days and sit-ups and some other things. But today I just do, like I said, 2 or 3 or 4 things consistently. I don't do it every day, but I also write it down and check it so I'm not fooling myself. I have a 30-day calendar, 31-day calendar, where those goals are listed, and they have 31 boxes along each of those areas that I do, like for the physical. So when I ran yesterday, I put in the 80 minutes or walked 80 minutes there and under exercise 25 for a total of 105 minutes. So at the end of the month, I know how many minutes of exercise that I did, but consistently. And I'd look at, so if I only have 4 days marked out of 31 days, I know I've left my plan. I haven't been consistently do that. So that's so people can take whatever they're passionate about. They want to do their Peloton or, to go to the gyms or do whatever they want to do. But it's the consistency of working on the kind of muscle development that will create the physical energy that you need and want out of life. But it can be real. It doesn't have to be complicated. That's the key.
Speaking of not being complicated, career is something that can be complicated, especially in terms of how much time it takes in our life. So you have career listed as something, and I want to ask you the question. I mean, are all of these 8 equal? Are they all 8 equal in terms of time and investment?
No.
Okay.
That's a great question. That's when people will look at, because that's where the logic comes in and say, well, there's 8, we'll divide 8 into 24 and 3. No, you get 3 hours of sleep, see how that works. No. Where you focus on the most right now, if you're doing real well spiritually, if you're doing real well financially, if you're really doing well in 3 or 4 areas, you just keep doing those 1 or 2 behaviors that make sure that you won't atrophy. See, every one of them is a muscle. All 8 of those areas, every area of our lives is a form of a muscle. And medically, they call it, if you stop using that muscle, as soon as you stop using it, it will atrophy. It means it goes backwards. It doesn't go forward. There is no status quo. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. So by consistently understanding that when I am physically working, doing my walk, I listen to for me, I listen to my Christian music. So I get uplifted spiritually. That impacts me there. Emotionally, it helps me there. I might listen to a podcast like you guys on my walk if I choose to do that. So there and that's why Audible books and my book will be within the next month will be on Audible form for those.
Did you read it yourself?
Yeah, I will do the reading myself.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was asked specifically by my clients and friends to do that, and so that's next on my goals and my list to do by the end of May. So if I don't do it by the end of May, you'll hold me accountable. and so I went on record.
Nate will
doing
do
that
it for you.
So again, each area where, like for me, spiritual. You didn't ask about that, but I made a goal 35 years ago to read the Bible cover to cover every year for the rest of my life. Well, I'm halfway through year 35. Wow. It takes 15 minutes a day. Most people are on their iPads and iPhones and devices 6-7 hours a day, right. But they don't have time to get the greatest of knowledge and of motivation of learning. So I just, again, made a choice. And also I have some other devotionals, but instead of me spending all those hours on things I can't control, and on social media and the news and taking in all that it's negative, I feed my mind with the positive, but I believe it's everything that's in this book, that there is, for every world thinking, there is a biblical scripture to combat that world thinking, and then people get to choose from there. So 1, 2, 3 behaviors at the most in each of those areas. And so, like I said, I might exercise 60 minutes 5 times a day, 5 times a week. Well, that's 6 hours out of 24 times 700.
Yeah, Brian, math check on that.
168 hours a week.
15. Oh, sorry.
Something like that. Okay. Got it.
Okay, well, we've kind of touched on mental, spiritual. We did a little bit on physical as well. What about the emotional side of things?
Well, if you're balanced and you're relationship oriented, and that's where I'll plug in real quick the 10%, and that'll help you with the emotional, because they're focused on relationships. If you look at the Dr. Tom Stanley's book on the Millionaire Mind, he breaks it down as to how much they spend on relationships and with people, that the 10% who have the net worth versus, and he calls those balance sheet affluent versus being income affluent, who have same earnings every year that the others have, that the 10% have, but they have high, what they call them, major mortgages, or high level, best areas of everything.
Most expensive car.
Most expensive car. They can't wait to think about going to another event of some sort, a cruise, travel the world, whatever it is. Everything they do is meant to bring pleasure to themselves, and they typically do it with people they don't even care about being with half the time. And so that's the relationship area. So the emotional is the more I'm imbalanced, the more I don't have. I have a lot of stresses in my life, but they don't bother me for long. People say, Ed, doesn't anything bother you? I said, everything still bothers me, but never, because of the growth, not for anywhere near as long. If it used to bother me 3 years, now it bothers me 3 days. If it was 3 days, about 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 seconds. So as my wife says, to anybody asks, if something happens, it's our job to get over it, build a bridge and get over it. And so the quicker you have the ability and the plan to go back and when you get off track, to just go right back to do the behaviors that kept you on track, that had you on track before you went off, that doesn't take a lot of time and energy. And the more you do that, you're emotionally sound. When something happens to your kids, like my wife came down with COVID, long story short, they found a cancerous tumor on her kidney. And we're talking just 3 weeks ago. But they found it just 2 months ago when she went to the hospital for COVID. And it showed up on her test. They did a further test, found the tumor that never would have been found out had that not happened. So instead of being upset, we were grateful for her going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Found it with our medical. They found a urologist that took care of her, talked to her over the phone, scheduled the appointment. This all happened, and on March 28th, so within 2 months, she was then 4 hours in surgery. They removed the whole tumor. She's cancer-free. And 3 weeks later, my wife of 74 years old, it looks like she's 40, and acts like she's 15 most times, is already probably about 90%.
Wow.
She's not to lift stuff right now, but she, if you saw her this morning, you could not believe that 3 weeks ago she was in 4 hours of surgery. And before I left the room that night at 6 o'clock, it took everything she had to get out of the bed to move 2 steps over to a chair. So that's how quickly you're getting. And the whole time, Tibby's, because of our spiritual faith, and understand that we live by the rules of the faith. Be anxious for nothing. See, anxiety brings depression. It didn't say you wouldn't be anxious, but when you are, who do you take it to? We take it to God and reminding that we're thankful, and what we're thankful for. We're thankful for relationships. We're thankful for everything that we have that we know is a gift of God. Yes, did we have impact upon that? Yeah. Did we do the behaviors? Yes, but didn't mean that things wouldn't happen to us. So we've had deaths, we've had cancers, we've had dementias for parents and things like that. All things that in many cases drop people to their knees and they don't get up. In our cases, I get more worked up over misplacing my keys than I do somebody that passed away that I dearly loved, because I know where they're going to be. So that emotional is not, everything's wonderful. Everything's, that fancy or false motivation or, everything's rosy. No, it's not. Life's a mess. That's what we're talking about here, in real life, addressing that. But in the midst of that, to have peace which passes all understanding can only happen when you're not relying on yourself.
Good words there, Ed. And as we were cruising through the rest of these elements of the balance wheel, we have social, personal, financial, spiritual, physical, career, mental. And the one that I want to touch on, because specifically we are heading into a busy season where a lot of our listeners are not going to see their families as much as they would desire. That's a big element of this wheel. Touch on the family part as we kind of close out the 8 sections.
Good. Well, the family is like all of them, is an ongoing thing. The value that when you are available. When I was in business, I just made sure my kids, their birthdays were on my calendar in red ink every year, and they saw that. They knew that if I could be in an event, I was in an event. They understood that we live by what we're teaching, and on the emotional section, we really talk about how to have human dynamics and how to have those relationships at the deepest level, and to express value to them for who they are. And so the number one thing that people tell me, and I know that I've helped them with life, that this book will do, is how do you separate your identity, your value as a human being, from being a human doing. The world says you only get to feel good about yourself if you do and if you win, and then they change the game to determine what a win is and what it's not. So for me and my family, we sat them down. They always understood that they were important, that my faith in God was the number one. Their mother was number two. And they came right after their mother. And then if you'll look somewhere, I forget the page number where it's at, it's near the end of the book, taken last November at our pre-Thanksgiving dinner for our clan. We're all 16, plus the baby was a month away, showing right behind my wife's head, in her mother, still to be waiting to be delivered. And that is not just a family picture that somebody would look at and even question if those kids wanted to be in that picture. I have grandkids we've graduated 5 from college last year of the 7. And every one of them, I built that place. Tibby and I built that place, that retirement home, because it's a gathering for the family that we've done it ever since they've been born. They knew that no thing in life was more important than they were to their parents, to me and their mother. And that may not be the case where they're at right now. But again, the whole thing is you can change. Instead of choosing to be a couch potato, instead, when you get home, you've worked hard all night, now you deserve it, so you go to the couch or you go to the computer or whatever. No, we never did that. And I say never. And I mean that the kids suffered believing that something else was more important than they are. So expressing that not only verbally, but most importantly by your actions of how was their day. Have some time to decompress when you get home. That's part of it. But by focusing on others that you really claim you love and care about, you draw energy from that, because they will communicate with you. Your kids will communicate with you if they really believe you're consistent in expressing that value, that you want to be with them versus I worked hard, now I can get to go golf, or I can get to go hunting, or I can get to go, again, back to things again, instead of building those relationships. It's not, something has to give, but it only gives when you determine, and part of the goal section in chapter 13 is about what's important versus urgent. When you put relationships ahead of anything else, here's where that starts really come to play.
You, oddly enough, of all the things that you've taught me and all the training sessions I've been involved in with you, the most impactful thing you said that I heard in a training downstairs was the first time I saw you train. So this would have been probably September 2012. I was told that this is a sales training. I'm like, cool, been through a million of them, can't wait. I love this stuff. This is, because it was life-changing for me when I first got it at 24 years old. Walk downstairs, and I'm maybe 15, 20 minutes in, and you said, which told me that this was not going to be a sales training. This is a life training.
Yes.
Which Matt Buckwalter still does here every Wednesday, going through, actually he went through your book already. You said, whenever Tibby walks into a room where I'm watching TV, the TV gets, I forget if it was muted or turned off.
It gets muted.
And I had never done that. In fact, I was the husband at that point who I would get irritated if it was a good part or whatever, and my wife started talking, like, come on, really, right now? This has to happen now. And that stuck with me. Like, that's probably the most impactful thing you've ever said from me, from my perspective, because it's something that changed that day. And, I haven't been perfect with it, but.
Well, and nobody's perfect, and neither am I. I didn't set myself up to be perfect. I set myself up as that here's real world, and I struggle like anybody else. Did I ever get irritated when Tibby came in the middle of something and started talking before, she said, Ed, excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you. That happened in a quick period of time, but it was a choice to mute it and to say Tibby's more important, because nobody listens to anything that anyone says. They watch what you do. So your behavior determines what your value is. So the consistency is the key. Consistency in doing all the behaviors in all 8 areas of your life. And so for me, as I learned to do that, I'm auditory. Tibby's visual, so she'll show me something, but if I need her to talk to me, and I need her to, so I could really hear it and get a sense of it. So when she'd come in and start talking to me, and I'm already listening to something and watching something on TV, I knew, I was not going to be able to give her what she deserved, and that also is an answer. What you just brought up is a great answer to what Nate just asked me about, the family, is just to consistently walk the talk and to consistently show that she is more valuable to me than any sports or any show or anything. And especially for me, I was probably watching something that I saw 6 times before, because I'm a sameness filler. So reruns are okay with me. I really don't watch much to learn anything. I just watch it to maybe, like some people do, to spend some time, relax, and it's my form.
Decompress.
But again, it was a choice. Okay, I can tell Tibby you're more valuable than anything else, and then when she comes in, I could be disgusted with her, and I could nonverbally roll my eyes or do what I just did now. Express to Tibby, you were an interruption in my day. Why would you do that? Or I could mute the darn thing and listen to her and find out what she really was thinking and feeling, and get it, respond to it, and prove to her that I cared more about her than anybody else or anything else.
Unless the Detroit Lions finally go to the Super Bowl, and she's going to need to stay out of the room, possibly out of the house.
Don't worry, Amelia, you're safe.
I may need her just drive down to Lidditz and be in Nate's neighborhood that day.
Brian, I taught you upfront contract. So
Yes,
you
yes.
can have an upfront contract.
There it
Ground
is.
rules on, and I do that. Tibby and I both do that. We set, an understanding of what's going on. We know what we're doing, what our priorities. I still make a list of priorities, and that is written every day on priorities for the day, and it's on our countersink. Every single day. Like today was devotions number 1, is always number 1.
Tibby number 2.
Tibby, well, in this case, she gets the whole page.
Today, the Waste No Day podcast was number 2.
Well, number 2 was traveled and go to be with Brian and Nate, and what the time was there when I needed to be gone. She knew I'd between travel and whatever, it'd be about 6 hours. So I communicated that, so she didn't have to worry about that. And then my focus, as it's been all through my life, building this business and everything else, I never had to worry about what was going on at home. I had a complete trust of Tivy, and she had a complete trust of me, and that was between us. So nobody else gets a vote, and that's the neat thing about it when you have those arrangements. So, but what I taught to you consistently, my kids, and they're in the book, or they're. If you ask them, you don't have to listen to me, because I didn't write it about me. I wrote it to say what's possible for you, whether you're a technician or whether you're a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Both people can have the same messes in their head emotionally and physically and financially, or maybe not financially, but you can't spend your way into happiness. So for me, it was, I know this works. I know the people that have told me, like you have, like Matt and others have had, what the impact we've had on them. We get a lot of that. I have all through the years. And Tibby's biggest job that she agreed to was to make sure I never got a fat head, that I never took it that this is about me. And so I credit our relationship, again, faith with God first, and then with Tibby and the kids, has always gave me the emotional strength to be able to then have the energy to travel, to do the training, to focus on sometimes 30, 40, 50, or more people in a room, and to be able to give each individual 100% attention. That takes a lot of energy. When I came here, and this is the last company I ever did it for, and I because of it starting with Larry 32 years, years ago as my 4th client, and I told Scott, I said, and Matt, you're the only person I'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, travel an hour to go start training at 6:30 in the morning, and I did that for a couple of years when I didn't have to, but because of the relationship and the appreciation for everything that I have is through people like you and this organization, and others that have they've responded to me and paid me what I felt I was worth and much more. So I never had to worry about the finances, for that. And then I watch, as I'm watching you, as I sit across this table from you guys today, being part of a management team, a leadership team, is now almost $25 to $30 million company. That when I started with you 31 years ago, was maybe $3 million.
Right.
And no technician making a cent other than their salary. And now you have technicians making,
Easily in the 6 figures.
got it.
Yeah.
That I have a lot of pride of being a small part of that, to help in that thinking differently, of sharing the wealth, getting them to see themselves as people like you did, who weren't just technicians, but people that people would trust if they made a good suggestion to them on their behalf, not to sell something. So that's why you didn't come to a sales course. I said, my business is to help you never sell anybody anything, but help them buy what they really need and want out of life.
Well, I'll tell you, you said a small part of this. We, as a management team, had a late breakfast, early lunch right before you came, where Matt, our boss, the owner here, Matt Buckwalter, said Ed was instrumental in who I am as a person and my success. I don't know if he was had time to tell you that before he left, but that's exactly what he said before we started this episode.
Thanks, Brian. He did, and he has. And if anyone that is listening to this program also, because I'm part of the Sandler Network, if they would look at Sandler, David H. Sandler's book, You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bicycle at a Seminar. So that was the whole basis of gradual and incremental versus quick fix impact training. When it was repurposed and redone about 15 years ago, if they read the book, they'll see much of this, the human dynamics training and the system and the process that we teach. But also, if they look at Appendix A, it's the story. I'm the only person in the world, in the universe of Sandler, of the world, that has a 3-generation family that started with the grandfather, Larry Rohr, then to Scott Rohr, then to the grandkids, and and so forth. And it's that story written by Matt and Scott is Appendix A in David Sandler's book, which is worldwide being sold, and it's on your bookshelf right now. So and that story where Matt tells of how he felt and what led him to his biggest sale and turned his career completely upside down was after a year and a half of consistently being in the training room under my influence, where he was under a call from a high domineering attorney telling him to get right over to his house, give him a quote on something that he wanted for a mansion. And he said, and my budget's $20,000. And Matt knew, and the story's there in the book, but he knew right then and there, and he was listening to me all of a sudden. He said, he absolutely knew based on what the guy told him that he needed for the square footage and everything else, that it would be many times that. So for the first time in his life, he said to him, I thank you very much. He responded, thank you very much for the call. Thank you very much for the inquiry. I won't be coming over. And the attorney, who's not used to people saying no to him, says, what do you mean you won't be coming over? He says, I want a quote. He says, you told me what your budget was, and based on what you told me, I don't believe I could do it for 3 times that. So why would you want me to come over? And there was about a 10-second, 15-second pause, and the guy says, would you please come over? I want to see you. He came over, had the biggest sale of his life, and that changed his concept on money. So when we talk about finances, it's a money concept. If you believe you're worth it, and that's why my website was always getano.com, not getayes.com. If it doesn't make sense, don't waste your time, energy, and effort chasing something that doesn't make sense to both parties. So once Matt understood that, and this was the one that was his tipping point in a good way, that he discovered that the guy respected him saying, no, this doesn't it might make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to me. And if I said, if I did it, I wouldn't get you for what you want to pay me, what you really need to take care of that new place that you just bought. And the guy respected that and told Matt that. And to this day, Matt tells me he's been the leader, this customer, of introduction after introduction after introduction to other like-minded people who have a lot of money to fix their houses up with the help of you. So there was a combination of that. But Matt has always been appreciative. All of you have been. And that's why it was an easy 2-hour drive for me to come in here today and do this face-to-face with you and Nate. I've watched you grow and been big part of. We've been a big part together, and now watch what you're doing to impact your team of now 130.
Yep, just pushing 130.
And remember, I started with a group of 12, 15 with Larry in a little cubbyhole of a training room off the side of their business one day 31, 32 years ago.
Oh man, Ed, it's so good. The content is so rich, and there's far more in the book that we don't have time to cover. We have to kind of bring it in for a landing here. And so before we do, I wanted to highlight again, the book is called A Life in Balance, A Life of Balance versus Imbalance. And it's available.
Amazon, you can go right on Amazon. The easiest way to do that, if people want to get my new website for the book, the website is Life of Balance, lifeofbalancebook.com. All one word, lifeofbalancebook.com. Press on that. It'll take them right to the first page. They can click on either Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Walmart, and brings it right up. People have been, we've been real pleased of ordering, and we're off and running. It's just been into publication for a couple of months, and this podcast and some other things that I've built into my behavioral plan to spread the word globally now is beginning to happen, and not concerned about what the numbers of the books are, just how many people will reach who are serious. I always call it serious training for serious people. Now the book is a look into your life for serious people who want more, deserve more, and can have more if they're willing to take responsibility for their own lives and quit blaming. We call it Lifeline. Winners in life. There's a scripture, it's Philippians 3, 13 and 14. It says, winners don't look back. They look forward. They press on towards the mark. They pursue. They finish the race. And they are awaiting the prize for what they're going to get in eternity. So they're looking forward. 90% of the population where they're at look back from birth to where they're at, and that's the biggest, living in guilt, living in regrets, living in woulda, shoulda, couldas. We call it head trash, baggage. None of it's good because you can't change anything. Now, you can learn from it, but the 10%ers are the ones that learn from birth to here to help them tweak to move forward. The 90%ers look back for reasons why they can't move forward. So our job is build the bridge for my wife as us drop the baggage. You would never go out to your garbage can that you put all your garbage in and bring it back into the house and throw it on the floor. But that's what people do. The 90%ers in many cases keep doing it, keep opening up the Band-Aids and pulling off the scabs and the hurts and the pains and renewing them. When yesterday was over at midnight, there is not a blazing thing you and I can do about what happened yesterday other than, again, learn from it to improve our balance wheel to move forward.
Oh, Ed, that's such good stuff. And as we wrap up things today, I know you had a couple other 10 to 90-10 things that you wanted to cover. Take us out on those concepts, and we'll call it a wrap for the show.
Good. I was asked recently a TV show where my chiropractor did a TV show up in Hazleton to do this because he likes the balance concept and preventive maintenance that I talk about. But so this is how we finished it up with him, that for those, the 10%ers, they have Christ at the center of their life wheels. They're value-driven. They're relationship-driven. They understand the difference between ROE, return on energy, versus ROI. They understand the difference between effectiveness versus efficiency. 90% live by efficiency, do a lot of things right. Effectiveness, people understand doing the right things right. That's effectiveness. Winners, they're balanced people, and they behave regardless of how they feel, where the 90% only behave if they feel like it. They're givers, they're savers versus spenders and takers. They don't make excuses. They take 100% responsibility for their results. My quote is, if I have a good day, it's my fault. And if I have a bad day, it's my fault. It's a choice on how you're going to respond. They have strong desire, strong commitment, strong outlook in life. They take responsibility. They're goal setters. They recover and overcome rejection quickly. These are all opposite things from the 90%. They have a strong identity and self-concept. They see themselves as winners, not victims. Their view of money is it's proper. They just understand it's a reward for doing the right things right on a consistent basis. They have an abundance mentality. In other words, they believe there's more out there if they're willing to pay the price to go and have it. And this is all tied in with, again, that lifeline, that timeline of life that we talked about. They're always looking forward one day at a time based on all the energy and the effort to become what they said they wanted to become. And so summing it up, they make balanced people. They make the most important decisions they need to make in life, this life, and for eternal life by choosing who's going to be in control of their life. They change the way they think. It always begins with changed thinking that leads to changed behaviors. But it's their thinking. That it's not changing thinking because I told them to do so or you told them to do so. They develop new skills and habits. That's the A-cash we talked about. They setting goals for life development plan based on what's important versus urgent. And they understand, and I know years ago, Matt and Aaron, that you guys picked up on this that I brought to you about Andy Andrews and the Traveler's Gift, or the 7 decisions of highly successful people. It's all about a choice. And he sums all that up in what he calls the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is everything you and I do matters. It matters to ourselves. It matters to those that we have influence over. It matters to our customers. It matters to our kids, everybody. So everything we do matters. So it's either leading us to whatever that is, to a more balanced life or to a more of an imbalanced life. So those are the key things. One author used it as a snowball effect, tying it with the butterfly effect. And again, either people hate snow or love snow, but they understand that there's just certain things you need to do that build upon one another. So see each area separate, but also as integrated is what the book has done.
That's a great place to leave it, Ed. Ed Staub has been our guest today. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ed. We enjoy not only your company, but the concepts you laid out in the book, and I hope our audience takes the time to study and think about those and put them into practice.
It was great to see you again, Ed. It's I haven't even heard your voice in probably a couple years, but we appreciate you not only stopping by, but you came down from the cabin, which was 2 hours away, and you could have done this on the phone. But we probably insinuated slightly we'd much rather have you in person. And we appreciate you making the drive down, and we appreciate Tibby giving you up for a half a day for us.
Yeah, and Nate and Brian, again, you've always meant a lot to me, and I just wish you well as you move forward. You've got the plan. Continue to, as some said on management, organize and execute around your priorities, and just make those constantly yourselves first. So you have the energy to give yourself out to your team members, and they'll respond to it. So any part in that was my pleasure. So thanks for everything.
Well, hey, that's a wrap for us here. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and our time spent with Ed Staub. I really want to challenge all of you about those 8 categories and asking yourself whether any one or more of those is out of balance. And those were mental, career, emotional, social, financial, physical, family, and spiritual. If any of those are out of balance, you end up with that bumpy ride. And that's really what Ed was talking about with us today, in making sure that not necessarily in time spent, but in focus given to each one of those categories, that you're not overextending yourself in one or completely avoiding any of the others, that you're keeping that healthy life of balance. We hope that's what you're doing. And if not, we challenge you to make the fix and look in the mirror and start that today. It's going to be a busy summer. You know that's coming, and it's not going to slow down unless you choose to intentionally slow it down. So let's make that the work for this week, as well as choosing to wake up every single morning and waste no day.